I'll see what goes.
I mean, if yeah. Oh, there we go. All right, we're live, and
All right, we go like twice.
happy Friday. I don't know what's going on. Maybe we're not live. Now we're probably live.
We're gonna go. We're gonna go as if
Hit the button like 8 times. So hopefully we're live, and if we're not, then I guess you'll see this later. But hello, everyone.
How's it going?
It's good. I'm tired.
Yeah, we're just talking about we're both tired. It's been a long week for both of us.
It's been a
But
really long week, but when I have a bunch of plans tomorrow, Saturday. So we're recording live on Friday, and I have a bunch of stuff I want to get crushed on Saturday. So today is not my Friday. Tomorrow will be my Friday, I think.
we talked a little bit about this, but I look forward to the weekends to rest, but my rest ends up being working on random stuff anyway.
Spinning up
Not good
another.
for you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Not good for you.
and I don't mind. We've talked about this a little bit before too. It's as a business owner, you pretty much work constantly anyway, and I think that's also just America. If you actually want to be successful, you're pretty much just going to work all the time. But my work-life balance is such that I do take time off. It's just I take different days off than most
Yeah,
people
right,
on
right.
like a 9 to 5 or whatever, and I actually really like that. A couple podcasts ago, I did hiking all morning. That's not like
Yeah.
what I do every day, but it's if it's Friday and I wanna cut out, I will. But we were talking a little bit about there's a concept that we're working through on how do we one thing with 3.8 that I've been wanting to do since the
Mhm.
beginning, and it was supposed to happen last year, and it just didn't happen for a different bunch of different reasons. But this year, we're going to get it off the ground. And the idea is effectively how do we bring people together to collaborate in a asynchronous, synchronous way? And things like masterminds or show and tell groups, there's all these kind of ideas out there, and I hate them all for a lot of different reasons,
Mm.
which we can go through. But we were going to open that idea with or that that chat with kind of a pre-chat about how do you
How?
know when to share your deal ideas? Because you just maybe share your story because I think it's really apt of what I see a lot too. It's like everyone's like secret agent
Yeah.
nonsensing everything.
It I think it does depend on what domain you're in, right? Because I can imagine a lot of people who are, talking
Yeah.
in, say, or a non-technical field, but specifically in tech, a lot of times in the entrepreneurial space, when you're meeting with other people, a lot
Yeah.
of people they're hesitant to talk unless they get like some NDA in place, as if their initial thought is that everyone has bad intentions.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some people have gotten burned by it before, where you shared something and someone went and pulled the rug out from under you. But honestly, that's one of the worst ways to move things forward is not sharing your idea because you're only living in your own head and your own head thinks your own idea is the best idea ever. So it's just so difficult to work with other people when honestly everyone has their own strengths, right? You could probably share some insight into something that this other person may not be thinking of, but they don't even want to start opening that or breaching that because of this fear that you're
Yeah.
going to take the idea and run with it as if like you knew exactly what they knew and that you could do it better than they can. And if that's their thought, they probably have other problems. But we were talking before, a lot of it's about the execution. So just
Oh, it's always
so
execution.
many ideas, right?
Yeah. And I think too, it's funny because you said it depends on the industry. If any industry was like scary to talk about ideas, I feel like it'd be software. Especially with AI, right? Like, you give me
Yeah,
some idea,
nowadays,
I can
yes, fair.
probably
Yeah,
build it in a few minutes or a couple hours with AI. Yeah, it's gonna be a shitty prototype, but great, sometimes that's all you need to get started, right? But, I totally agree, and it's interesting. So, like, the Your Pods thing is, like, a great example. I did a cast on this, I think it was this week, it all blurs together, but
this week.
yeah, we're talking I was talking with some friends, and they needed a podcast app for iOS that functioned with this service sync protocol, open source called gPodder. So I built one with AI, and then I was like, "Dang, that works pretty well," and I kept going with it, and put it in the App Store, labeled it for a couple bucks, and then I put the source open sourced it. So anyone in the world can download the code to compile it for themselves on GitHub, and I guess if they wanted to sell it, they can. And a lot of people were like, "Why would you do that? You're gonna not someone's gonna take your product and sell it." One, it's against the licensing, so I'd probably sue them if they like totally just like copy and pasted it. If you rebrand it and like you build another, it's GPL3, so it's pretty permissive license, but I have a trademark, and so you can't just like one to one it and like
Yeah.
pretend to be me. But if you wanted to, you can. And if I would appreciate if people didn't do that, but like just contribute back to the source.
Yeah. The idea of open source.
And so there's a little bit of a risk there. And there's been some open source stuff in the past that's been lifted and people have gotten screwed, but it's also that's a little bit of the risk you take. But the benefits are far outweighed by the benefits, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's so much easier to like the reason I was able to build the app was because there's a lot of open source out there. The models were trained on it. There is no open source code in it as far as I can tell, other than it's like compliant with the gpotter sync API, which I didn't
Mm.
use anything from the
It's
project,
open.
but
Yeah.
it's like reverse engineer kind of thing. But there could be, right? Like I could have probably saved some time by incorporating a bunch of stuff, but whatever. And it's like I also like I don't think it's going to make me millions of dollars or even
Mhm.
thousands of
Right.
dollars. Maybe it does. Cool. Like I'm fine with that, but realistically, it's a pretty niche product. It's a pretty niche thing that people need. So cool. We've talked about it before too. It costs money to put stuff in the app store. So it's like I'm
Yeah.
looking at it
There's
as
already
like a
some
break
barrier.
even
Right.
endeavor and then maybe be able to afford like hamburger or something.
Yeah. I think it does go back to a little bit of like intention, like what do you want to
Yeah.
do with the project, right? I feel like a lot of people who do want to build their own thing have their own personal reasons for doing it, but I found the easiest way to get about doing these types of things is like to work on things where you don't necessarily really care about who
Yeah.
does it. So a lot of the things I work on now, I feel are things where if I were, it's easier said than done right now. But if I were not the one who were to champion it forward, then that's okay because the whole point was just have that idea realized.
Yeah.
And it's one, you probably wouldn't make a huge amounts of money anyway, but two, it's more about the idea behind why you're doing what you're doing as opposed to the outcomes or what you're expecting to get out of it.
Yeah.
In this case, usually financial return. And some things.
And like this isn't an ad, but it's like I want to talk my own book to some extent as well because it's real and it's
Mm.
very easy to see it. And so at the same time, there's a stealth product that I'm working on that I haven't really talked about at all. I don't think publicly. I might have mentioned it here or there as like a
Yeah,
stealth
I
product.
think you've teased it here and there. Yeah.
But that's something that I'm a little bit more careful sharing because it's a good enough idea and I'm also working on it, so it's gonna happen. But it's also the approach that I need to take with this idea is it has the cold start problem in startup land. So it's like literally like how do you get it started? So like building the software is part one,
Yep.
but then getting people to use it is the hard part. And because there's a lot of incumbent, more capitalized companies out there, I need to be a little more careful about how I get started up because if it becomes too good of an idea too quickly, then I become a target. And that's not most businesses. Maybe if you're in a competitive space, it could be, and almost all businesses are to some extent. But like conversely, I'm not talking about it publicly on the podcast, but I am
Mm.
talking about it with people one on one or in small groups that to get feedback, to get help through ideation or start talking to potential customers, that kind of stuff. So it's also for me, it's like a venue of share when you're trying to get something started. If you think it's so brilliant that you can't talk about it, it's probably wrong, just as a rule of thumb.
Yeah.
And then unless it's like national security related or something like that, and you can't talk about it, okay, but for the most part, most people probably don't care. Now, I
Yeah,
don't know that I would just go advertise it to a bunch of well-capitalized companies either, and, like, when you go to acquire companies, if you're trying to acquire customers that might have the ability to compete with you or add some of your functionality as a feature, you need to be careful. But there's plenty of people in the world to court for potential users that you don't need to worry too much about. But yeah, I don't do NDAs and stuff. Like, I will when I solicit feedback, I will put like a proprietary, confidential, don't share kind of little thing on the because I think it also just helps people to know, oh, I shouldn't share this with other
yeah,
people, and maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I think there's just like the levels of disclosure thing, and I think most people operate. I forget there's a model of an information science, right, about
oh,
levels of
interesting.
disclosure.
Okay, yeah,
It's
yeah.
also similar to therapy, right? You don't walk up to somebody and like, tell
Oh,
them
I
about
just
their
start. Yeah, yeah,
medical
yeah, yeah,
condition,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
There's
yeah.
like
Okay,
levels of
okay, yeah, yeah.
disclosure for like people. But I always forget what it is, but I believe the level 1 or 0 or however it starts is like the most critical, the most sensitive information, and then it goes and most companies don't explain to you every little detail about how they do stuff
Right.
either, right? But I feel like most people are operating at that like root level 0. This is the most secretive idea ever, and if someone hears that they're gonna take it, maybe, but probably not. And if they
Yeah.
do, then I would also probably argue that the idea might not have just been as good as you thought it was because it was very easy to implement for another company to do or
Right.
another group of people, which I think is the bigger problem. And I think a lot of people who are getting started, they don't have that knowledge and understanding to know when you have a new market making opportunity or you have a new like core opportunity in a business marketplace too, and it's
Got it.
kinda hard to
Yeah.
separate out. It's like a lot of people build features, is
Yeah.
the way
Yeah.
to put it.
Okay. Yeah. That reminds me a lot of the idea the idea of defensibility and having a moat, right? So in relation to not
Yeah,
sharing your idea, it's much easier if you know in the back of your mind that you have something that's defensible or a moat. So if you do have IP that no one knows about, that's
yeah,
you can talk about the ideas around it, but they can't actually implement it because they're missing a core piece of it, which would be your IP. Or if you have this huge data lake that no one has access to, right? So that it's much easier to talk about your idea that expands on it, but they can't rebuild it because they don't have the same thing. They can't. That doesn't prevent someone from going and reconstructing it, but at the same time, that takes effort. That takes time investment that
yep.
no one who is not you, who's passionate about the idea, is going to do.
Yeah, and the people who would be, like, fishing for that kind of thing in my mind too are also the people who probably can't execute on it.
Yeah. That, right. Yeah.
If they're so
Yeah.
desperate for a business idea, they have to rip you off because you're trying to get other founder advice or you're trying to get people's just opinion on stuff, or if you're trying to get into a market you don't know about, trying to understand it, like, those are the shitty people anyway, and yeah, maybe you get scooped and, like, you've learned something, but it's such a rare phenomenon. I do think, though, that the you the IP question's very interesting, especially with AI, and I would agree with what you said 3 weeks ago. Today, I don't even know if a data lake really matters.
I think it depends on the kind of data and what you're trying to do with it. I do think I would agree with you. My opinion on the strength of defensibility in terms of IP and data has changed over the past few months because of
Yeah.
the possibility of capabilities of AI. But I still think there's something valuable there that you can't simply swing the AI hammer at. But I could be proven wrong. I'm not sure actually.
Interesting, 'cause I would have
So
agreed with you
if I,
3 weeks ago.
yeah, if I could throw it because I think I might see where you're going with this, right? If
Yeah,
you have some kind of product or something that's publicly accessible, it used to be difficult to pull that data. There are always ways around it, right? Anytime you
yeah,
share something publicly, there's a way for someone to capture that information, whether it's
yeah,
taking a picture with their phone or whatever, right? And now with the capabilities of AI, it's much easier to reverse engineer data that you see online or
Yeah.
scrape data that you see online. So that's a fair
Yeah,
point.
I guess sure. No, okay, maybe I'll clarify because the uniqueness of your data is an edge to some extent, but the edge typically comes from how you execute off that data source, right? So it's like, how do
Correct.
you
Yes. Yes. How do you use it?
monetize
How do you
or
leverage it? Right. Yeah. Mhm.
provide value? And a
Yeah.
lot of companies have built their, like, business on that, but because of the capabilities of AI, like, that moat isn't really a moat in almost any instance at this point. And so you having the proprietary data set might still be a little bit of a moat, but the reality is, like, the AI models, like, the frontier stuff is so good that so I'll bring this up
Mm.
because I was talking to a buddy this week, and their company got, like, Claude 4.6.
Which is basically getting out overpowered by Opus 4.6.
And so they might have a better product that Claude can't solve completely for, but the core of the product was, it's an AI company doing, uh, really hard stuff with, proprietary-esque data. I don't wanna give too much away because I don't wanna scoop them, but they've had instances now, I guess, where people have come to them and been like, "So this is the Claude version. Why are you different?"
Uh,
And so part of
okay.
it, I think,
Okay.
is, yeah, maybe the model is better or can do stuff that your software was doing before in a different way. But I also think that a lot of companies provide a value add that isn't really a value add as the models get more capable.
I think that's fair, but depending on the kind of application you have and the kind of data you're keeping, I think there's a case to be made about the user base. So even if you can replicate this application or use case, if you have an incumbent that already has users using it, switching costs are fairly high. And I think this is the case that's being made a lot for systems of
Yeah.
record where
Yep.
going back to the whole idea of software is dead kind of thing, AI can just rebuild your software customized for you. But large corporations or even small ones, there's a high switching cost for getting all your people to switch off of one thing to a custom platform you guys have built. So there are a lot of these intangible or hidden costs that people don't quite factor in when you're talking about being able to build these custom things. So even though
Yeah.
you can replicate someone's software, like I could build another Slack, but
Yep.
getting the whole adoption of Slack is not going to be easy for me.
Yeah, and then it's, hiring people, right, who
Yeah,
now can't use Nathan
yeah,
or
exactly.
whatever
Yeah,
different.
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
I right now, I would agree with that. I do think that we are going to be entering an era for most people, that's actually probably not gonna be real anymore. I
Interesting.
really like, we're there today, it's going back to what we were talking about a couple weeks ago, it's like people don't really realize it, but this idea that, like, I will be able to, I don't know, AI code my own Andrew flow on something or whatever I need it to do and make it the way that I think it needs to be done is maybe a couple years away if the trend holds, for just average people. Like, already, like, pretty much 100% of the developer engineer friends that I have do not code anymore unless they, like, just want to. Like,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
their job or whatever they're trying to work on, like, it's AI first, and they're managing the intern.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I can't tell you, I don't think I've written I don't even do commands anymore. If I need to build a service, I'm just like, "Hey, AI, go build the service for me," and and then I'm like, "Hey, make it
That's
work
pretty
better
bad.
because it didn't work." And
I still navigate the terminal and I still occasionally write scripts of my own, but yeah,
I
yeah,
don't. I really don't
right.
know. I and that used to be the kind of stuff, again, 3 weeks ago that I would have been like, "Ah, it's not there yet." I'm like, "That's totally there now." Because giving somebody a demo of the stealth product, and I literally just opened up the anti-gravity is what I've been using, and I didn't even it was in a development environment and it wasn't ready to go. So I was just like, "Hey, start the thing. I want to see the UI."
Okay.
And
Yeah,
as I
yeah.
was talking to them about just a little bit more of the detail, it was firing off as going it took probably way faster for me to just do it. But I'm like, that's like 6 commands or something that I have to do, and
Yeah, and
I'm
you
trying to
were taking your
in a
attention
meeting
away.
and yeah,
Right,
and it
right.
got it working, right? And then it popped up my little web browser and I shared that and I was like, "Yeah, here's what I'm working on. Give me some feedback." And I think like we've talked about OpenClaw and all this other stuff, and I think that the non-technical folks or the people who don't build software are starting to get the tools that with a little bit of work and a little bit of creativity gives them that extension and gives them that leverage. And we're a version or 2 away of automating, like, most of the crappy work that I have to do. Like, this is the promise of, like, the IBM, I forget what it is, 8008 terminal or whatever, where everyone would build your own Rolodex. No one wanted to fucking do that and sit there in BASIC for 20 hours and build it. So then this whole software industry came up because they're like, "Wow, we can use all this stuff, but I don't wanna have to build it." But I think we're actually going back to that to I can just describe what I want done or describe the outcomes that I want, and the thing does it, and I'm freed up now to do all this other work. And so the data thing, it tie it back, again, the proprietary edge was like we've groomed all this data and we've made this shape and we can work with it and we can express value on top of it, where now I can just have it will be true. It is true today, but there's a lot of asterisks on the statement. But it will be true in the next year
Mm.
that for most data in most cases, like I just burn some electrons with the AI and it figures out enough for me to get the information I need.
Yes, but that's one way. But then getting so like you could replicate or you could use or pull whatever data you need, but then to get something out there that people would use is still the other part, right? So if you're
Yeah, but
talking about
yeah, I'm not talking about building a company at this point. I'm talking about like usability. So like the user base for a lot of these companies is going to shrink drastically because I just need this little edge case of the data or I need to tap into it once to understand something or to check my thinking and then I don't touch it again. Whereas now I have to subscribe to your shitty SaaS platform to build up this thing.
yeah, I think that's the thing, and I can't connect the dots here because if I'm talking about an enterprise, I like the point you made earlier, right? Everyone knows how to use Slack. Not everyone knows how to use Nathan Slack.
Yep.
So, like, already having that, and not even just Slack. If you're talking about something like an ERP of some sort, everyone knows how to use that thing. And yes, maybe people will be writing layers on top of it. Like, I can imagine someone who doesn't like a specific software and then uses AI to write,
Yeah.
hey, here's how I work, transform it into stuff that whatever ERP that the enterprise uses works,
Yep.
right? But not every single person, or I don't know. I feel like it's going to be too difficult to coordinate the workflows of every single individual and swinging the AI hammer at it. I'm not 100% sure it will work in
I
that
think
way.
APIs are gonna be the new SaaS business, and there will be an era of data as a service kind of thing, and then eventually the models will either get access to that data or not need it, and they'll just be smart and capable enough to figure out whatever you're trying to come up with, that data would have been helpful for without it. And there are like
Mm.
so like there's some data I'm trying to think of a grounded use case that's a little easier to talk through, but there's some data that it's unique, and so it's not going to be able to use the value of the unique data, but the way the way that most people use unique data is not dependent on the uniqueness of the data, if that makes sense. It's like they have some kind of an algorithm and that data is
Uh,
critical to the algorithm. In the future, the argument
sure.
I'm making is that might not be the case because the AI will be able to infer in other ways just as good without it. And so a lot of these companies that have built up these proprietary data lake warehouse things, I don't think that's really a model anymore.
And maybe it depends on the industry because the first thing that jumped to my head was you have experience in healthcare as well. If
Yep.
you're talking about like an EHR, I don't think it would be maybe a few more years down the line, but there is something to be said
Sure.
about the kind of data that EHRs hold.
Yeah.
Not just because of the privacy piece, I
Yeah,
think.
but I think, yeah, we're gonna, as humans, try to prevent it from being used to learn, but people there's already open data sets for this stuff. There's
Yeah.
already open data, and a lot of the models are actually getting really good at diagnostics, especially for basic stuff. If you have these weird edge case diseases or diseases that kind of mimic symptomology across different, it's like that, yeah, you still, it's not clear, and doctors get it wrong all the time too. They tend to, over time, get it right, but the models are already really good. And
Yeah,
so
there are
I see
models
the
that meet
world where you're
physicians' lab
like,
exams.
I have a fever of 87.9 or 99.1, and I was in this country and my whatever, and then you dump it, it just knows your context and it'll be like, oh, that's probably the flu if you don't get better in 3 days, or if these symptoms develop, then whatever. And don't do
Yeah,
this
yeah,
today because it's not good enough today, but it's in the hands of a professional, it's amazing today. So it's a really big boost for doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals to do some of this stuff. It's still not good enough, and mostly because I think the frontier model companies are too scared to like medically diagnose people because we built all these scary laws around it. But I think a really good concrete example is I was reading a paper that somebody just dumped a bunch of, I think it was mice genomes into, I think it was, I don't know, I think it was OpenAI, but I don't know, it doesn't really matter. And they were basically just, what's here? And then it figured out it was DNA and figured out it was probably some kind of a rodent. And okay, great. We didn't really learn anything. But then they were working with it a little bit. And then they were like, identify possible areas of interest. And it did. And it found a couple things that the researchers missed. Like it was known, but they just had missed it or glossed over or whatever. And then it pointed to some areas that they thought was interesting. Like there's no evidence that there's anything that we've learned from that yet, but they're like looking at it to be like, actually, the rationale that it gave, I guess, was good enough. I just glossed the paper, so don't at me, but there's other instances of this as well where you feed, like it used to be, genomic interpretation would take tens of thousands of dollars, and it's mostly junk anyway, right? It's like there's very
mhm.
little of the genome that actually matters. But the corpus of medical stuff is also going to be that. It already is to some extent. And so it's
Yeah.
like the value of the medical record today is coordination for the staff treating you, not necessarily treating you, if that makes sense. Like it can help and it can help prevent mistakes and poor decision making, but it's really just like a way to get people coordinated for the most part.
Yeah, I think the coordination piece is a big element to it. But the point, one of the points I did want to make was the foundation models, I think, are seeing that pathway where you have your foundation LLM is the first place you go to. That was why OpenAI Health and Anthropic Health, they
Oh,
opened up
it's
these verticals to
such a
start.
bad idea, folks. Don't put your health data into anybody's model right now. Please just don't.
But I
Area.
to your point, yeah, but to your point, it will get there. I think that's the idea. But even I feel like there's going to be something that I don't know. Maybe it's maybe just because I can't envision what that looks like yet. But when you don't have this corpus of health records that are centrally organized, you can't build anything like a global population model or anything like that, where you see things on wider scales.
no.
because
But
all that is self-contained into each
yeah,
individual's
you're talking about research
sandbox
though.
cell.
Yeah, yeah, but you're talking about research. So, like, a global population model is helpful for, like, validation of things or discovery of things, but we're we're at the point where I think there's enough data that most things are already known, right? Again, there's weird edge cases. You can always find like symptomology of things earlier, but like we know what cancer is. We haven't had a new like human disease come up, right? Even COVID was like a coronavirus. We know what coronaviruses are. We knew that it was a coronavirus very early. We spent a lot of time and energy to learn about the specific capabilities of that evolution of a coronavirus, and we're still learning about it, but like the core from like I guess the way that I'm thinking about this from like a health patient perspective, like most people are fine, right? Like most people, like you're healthy. If you're not healthy, you fall into a bunch of edge cases, and everybody always thinks that's how the world is. But the reality is, like most people are healthy most of the time, and when you get sick, within 14 days, you're typically better regardless because it's a virus or some sort of a bacterial infection that you'll get over. If you don't get over it, that's when you need help. Or it
Mm.
could be signs of something more serious. And that's why a lot of people go to the doctor because they just don't know. But th- that you don't need a proprietary data set for that because we've already created a lot of these systems. And so the AI, why it's good today is because it's scanning the open disease models. It's scanning the open diagnostic models. It's synthesizing all of the medical diagnostics and there's data sets and stuff too. So it like has enough context there. It's just we haven't pushed it over the line yet with and I'm assuming that OpenAI's health initiative is to probably test it and to see
Mm.
how good it actually is, because I think everybody thinks it's probably good, and it's like to what extent and like where is it not working well is probably what they're doing, or it's not as good as we think it is, and they want to train it better. But also, terrible idea. Don't do it. Just do not put your health record. Don't trust AI diagnostics. Don't. This is all future stuff, but it will be here. Like this is, I'm certain, right? That we. What's the site? Is it WebMD?
I mean, WebMD is a site.
Yeah, but WebMD's symptom tracker thing is already really good. Again, like, you don't depend on it because it's not validated, but it's pretty damn good, and if you put in your symptoms, it's, like, probably gonna give you, like, a ballpark.
Mm.
It's not a diagnosis, but it's gonna give you, like, a pretty good probability of what you may or may not have. And again, go to a doctor if you're sick or if you're concerned about something, go seek proper medical attention. But again, for most people in most instances, it's some kind of a virus, it's some kind of a thing that you'll be fine with.
Am I getting this correct in that the implicit thing you're saying is proprietary data sets are usually valuable because there's something new in these data sets, and that because
Potentially.
everything is
But
known that your data is not as valuable as you think it is,
yeah, and
right?
it's I think it's also thinking through, like, traditionally, we have heuristic data basically, right? It's like we have all of these diseases, to use the healthcare example. And so we look at the commonalities for some kind of a linkage. We run your symptoms through that kind of algorithm, and then we do a differential or something like that
Sure.
to try
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
understand, right? That's basic
Yep.
medicine. And with AI, though, with the way that the models synthesize information, the way that they can pull different data sources, make observations, the inference of these is getting to be so good that it completes it it correctly identifies probabilistic output without having a lot of the data that you would normally need or think you need.
Yes.
That's what the
Yeah.
point I'm trying to make, and, like, I'm having a hard because, like, I can see it and I almost wanna draw it because it's and that's what this transformer architecture is really good at, right? It's like I
Yeah,
dump
yeah.
a bunch of words into it, and then it infers the result, and most of the time, it's pretty damn good. When it's not good, you don't wanna use it for medicines because you die or someone gets really hurt or, like, you miss something, but it's getting much, much better. And there's other systems, other algorithms, there's other architectures at play as well. It's not just transformers, but, like, we finally hit the point now where getting the information in and out is solved, and a lot of things are much less complicated for AI at scale than it is for a human, if that makes sense.
Uh,
Because it just takes more
can you repeat?
data, and it just it brings in more data and can make a better informed probabilistic outcome analysis than a human can given the right data.
But then that's where, so I guess what I'm trying to dance around is the curation or the
Mhm.
ability to curate a data set. Because there are flooded cases where if you give an LM too much information to go on,
Yep.
it can't anchor properly unless you have a lot of this anchoring, which is
Yeah.
difficult to do in there.
Yeah,
So
and that's right, today, yes, that's true. In
yeah,
a
yeah,
year,
and
for
we're
most
seeing
things, I don't think that's true anymore.
sure,
Because you do have to train it on the data, and that's the big problem with, like, health data is nobody wants to get it trained because it's gonna, make most things irrelevant once it actually has that context. And again, we're not gonna replace doctors, we're not gonna replace everybody with AI, but I do see a very near future where AI is much more accurate than a person diagnosing you with the common cold and telling you to stay home for 3 days than you having to go to a doctor and tie up the healthcare system because you have a stuffy nose versus somebody who might have some kind of weird disease or cancer or some kind of a trauma incident that actually needs that help. So I see it as a really great opportunity to extend our resources that we have and relieve a lot of the pressures on the system. That, of course, is not what people are billing this as.
yeah. I mean,
And again,
as a
it's
display,
not
as a,
a one size fits all tool. Even in the I am very confident that this will happen. It's to what extent that it'll happen. And it's mostly people right now being comfortable with it, but I think we're already getting there with there's a lot of automated, like, there used to be things called nurse advisor lines. You could call the hospital and just be like, "Hey, I have this medication, I have a question," or they can't give you medical advice per se, but they can
they
give
can
you
direct you.
context
Yeah,
about
yeah,
something.
yeah.
A lot of that's gone away with chatbots, and the medical notes that you get as part of your doctor visit are oftentimes AI generated, and yeah, there's still problems in there. I'm so sick of that fucking excuse because having worked with real people before AI was all over healthcare, there was all sorts of fucking mistakes all the time, just like everything else, right? And so the question is the AI better than people most of the time, or are people better than AI most of the time? And if the people are better, then do people. If people are not better, then do AI, right? It's just like any other technology. If the computer can listen to me talk and type faster, then I'm not going to type. Right? Like
Hmm.
it's not hard for me, but everybody has so much emotion behind, is it intelligent? It's going to take my job. No, it's just every other tool is going to make it better. But that's preventing us from getting these use cases. And like the therapy apps are these things are a dime a dozen now, but there is an opportunity, I think, in that space to really help. The problem is the fundamental nature of LLMs is not good for therapy, but it
Hmm.
could be good for people who are I don't know if I'm depressed. Oh, here's a depression questionnaire. Oh, yeah, you should probably go to a doctor. You should probably see someone, or you should call 911 or whatever, like, the outcome is. That is a real thing. It's just that we can't get there because of human system limitations. But those will mostly be irrelevant in a year. 'Cause if the curve continues of progress, that's my big, like, disclaimer on this whole conversation is that there's so much, like, future looking shit. I'm trying to collapse that function into what I know is capable today that most people aren't being exposed to, and if that trend line continues, where are we gonna be?
Yeah, that's the contingency though, right? If the trend line
Yeah.
continues, and that's what people are discussing now, this idea of the
And
bubble.
the
Is it
only
really
reason
realistic?
the only reason I don't see it continuing, well, that might be an interesting kind of thing to talk about. Like, the only reason I wouldn't see it continue is that the bubble collapses faster than the progress can happen,
Yeah.
which seeming really going to happen at this point. But a lot of the we talked about this the other day, like a lot of the advances the models are getting right now are not necessarily like
Change
revolutions
or
in
jumps.
training or
Yeah.
architecture. It's a lot of just resources. Like they just need more memory, they need more compute, they need the ability to have persistence, which requires more. So it's like this is the data center debate with folks. At the same time, though, there's technologies that are coming out that are better than transformers for some things or more efficient than transformers for some things. And so this everybody's anchored into like, we need a billion data centers and big tech is going to destroy the world. They're probably going to destroy the world, but it's probably not going to be the data centers. But that trend line is going up, but the efficiency of the things they're putting in the data centers, the efficiency of the models, the efficiency of all this other work is also coming into play, and people aren't, like, holding that context in their mind at the same time. And all of this stuff continues to equalize the way that it's going, like, it's gonna be a really wild, like, 18 months. Unless it all it's very well that the whole thing pops. Like, my prediction in our prediction episode was that companies are gonna call bullshit on this and stop using it. And I think that's coming true, except for coding and except for tech, because a lot of the models are better at coding than junior engineers, as we've talked about. So, again, I don't think you should replace people because I think you're screwed if you do, but whatever. But it's allowing you, like I've said before, like, if you needed 10 people to build a thing previous, now you probably need 5 people or 6. There's some level of coefficient where you definitely need less people to do the same amount of work,
Mhm.
and I think it's getting to the point now where those people who would normally be doing that work can now do other work, if that makes
Yes.
sense. You're, like, leveling people up in the capability, and so that has untold ramifications going forward of how fast this stuff moves. The self-replicating code idea is very real. So all of that to me points to this future where these proprietary data, trying to bring it back to this data thing again, these proprietary data stuff, like we might need it to train the model, but I'm also there is evidence to suggest that these things can infer in ways that we didn't think was necessarily possible, and it provides a similar or same outcome without having that data.
Yeah, because it's like it is very much the big data approach, right? Given enough
Yeah,
information, your chances or your I should say chances, but the probability that something is accurate when you have larger and larger amounts of data gets more and more precise.
and
You don't
it's
need that
also
specific, yeah, you don't need that specific proprietary piece to get
right.
at the same idea. Yeah,
And it's a lot of the stuff that we think is proprietary turns out really isn't,
it's not really. You can
right?
infer a lot of information or reverse engineer it, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's for folks who are probably, like, super lost on this or, like, really mad at this point, like,
And by the way, we mentioned we weren't going to talk about AI before we jumped into the conversation.
I know,
We've
right?
been talking about AI.
The like, a way to illustrate this too is one thing I've always thought was funny was everybody's really concerned about their identity online, right? Being, like, a secret or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Your
you're
computer
yeah,
uses a unique number to go talk to other computers on the internet. And it's the same thing with the phone. I don't know if you remember, but phone numbers. So everyone's, oh, you can't give someone your phone number. They'll know who you are. And it's like, it's a public number in most cases published in a book that everybody gets. Like,
right.
why are you like, yeah, maybe you don't want some creepy person calling you, but it's like they could figure it out very easily as well. But there's this illusion that this information is somehow like really secret or proprietary. And the reality is it's not. And even unlisted numbers are not really hard to figure out. And so I think it's like, again, we've created all these weird systems of stuff that we think is really proprietary or valuable, but it's only really proprietary and valuable because we treat it that way. It's not like fundamentally not actually valuable in the era of AI. And so
Mm.
it requires like a phase shift, I think, of like the AI companies want more data. It's valuable to them right now because they can train the model and get different results with it. But I think for everybody else using this and for a lot of companies, I think the idea of like data edge is like largely gone
Yeah, it's probably
in a
worth
year.
it's worth a deeper conversation, right? Because there are
Yeah.
discussions around synthetic data and being able to create information and train certain types of models off of. But I
Yeah, it's
think that
been
kind
working
of
pretty
highlights,
well.
depending on how well you can use it. I think there are some domains where synthetic data actually works really well, and there are some
Mhm.
where I'm skeptical as to whether it can actually take off. Health is one of those situations where I think synthetic data.
Yeah, I would
I'm not 100%
agree.
sure on synthetic data. Yeah,
Yeah, oh,
but
I have a lot of opinions on that. I would say generally no in health. There
yeah,
are instances where I will say that there are instances where it can be good, but there are instances where synthetic data can help validate a hypothesis without having to run on real data, which is valuable in
run
itself.
a simulation effectively. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Or try to help you scale or predict scalability when you can't. But for the most part, I would say generally in a blanket statement, probably not.
Yeah.
We should we should
I keep forgetting.
yeah, we should
Synthetic data is when you create fake data that matches a specific profile to use for trading information based off of other data. So
oh,
it,
I don't think I sent you the paper on imputing. I probably
imputing?
didn't. Yeah, so
I
there's
don't
a
recall this.
no, I've read a really interesting paper this week that on the synthetic data front, it reminded me that and that's what I've been talking about this whole time really inarticulately, but, the ways that a lot of the algorithm for AI, and we're all over AI right now, but like transformers and associated infrastructure works, that it can impute enough information about stuff to fill the gap
Yeah,
in a
that's what
pretty
I was thinking
reliable
you're referring
way.
to. Yeah.
Yeah, and, like, again, in health, like, that's possibly bad 'cause, like, you might not have cancer, but it's like, "Oh, you probably have cancer because you have all these other symptoms," and but that's why you have diagnostic tests, but anyway. But yeah, so and that's my point on this too, is it's like your heuristic in the past would need that data to actually compute
To
the
be able to make
algorithm,
that,
but the
right?
AI is able to infer or impute enough data to make a similar determination. And in most instances, like the level of accuracy, and that's maybe another thing that I'm inarticulately making a point on, the level of accuracy you need is oftentimes way less than you think it is.
Mm,
Or we've
yeah.
created human systems that require the accuracy for, again, the sake of being accurate.
A human requirement as opposed to some sort of
Yeah.
statistical or data
Or
driven.
outcome, right?
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, so I don't know, we can talk about this whole, like, thing that we were talking about earlier, maybe sometime other in the future.
It's a work in progress, but ultimately, I think the idea was we wanted to talk about how to start sharing ideas more
Yeah, and then we went off
effectively
the
in
rails.
this. Yeah, we're
Yeah, I
talking
know.
about a
I went off
program.
the
We were
rails.
trying to run it. We ended up talking about data.
Data's really important right now, but again, I don't think in a year or more, or maybe 2, I don't think it's gonna be nearly as important. I do think privacy is gonna be more important and more valuable, which is a whole different thing,
Yeah,
especially
there's
when it comes
definitely a
to
lot of
data.
research around. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of research around how to maintain a lot of the privacy given the advent of LLMs. I think at the end of the day, it's still again more about process or the process. So like, how you're using the data, how you're executing on an idea really is just doing the work kind of thing. And I think that's the the highlight of the whole conversation is people are too afraid to share their idea, but a lot of it really is just doing it, executing
Yeah.
on it. It's making it work, making it happen.
Yeah, share early, share often. It's not
Yeah,
also good enough to share once and then go on your way.
yeah,
That's all
involved.
part of
Yeah,
iterative development,
right.
iterative growth, and yeah, well, I actually talk about that because like, I got off on a data rant, but, yeah, let's talk about that next week with the idea of the whatever, the collider, edge collider.
Yeah,
That's a whole
we
different.
need a new name. We
I
need a
think
new name for that.
I titled this episode Edge Collider because I was just like, I don't really know
There's
what
nothing
else to
there's
call
nothing we're
it.
talking about.
And
Let's
I
see if
mean,
we can
I
kind of
think I think it's in a way it is related, right? Because it's the whole point is to share information and get so it's like data at the end of the day is information and like what you do with
ah,
it is like the
clever.
feedback.
Yeah, nice. Okay,
Well,
I
that's
like how
why
you
my
put
mind went there, right?
that.
Because we were
I see.
gonna talk about that, and then I started I read this paper that I forgot to send you, and I didn't tell anybody about it on the episode, so now everyone's super
Yeah, yeah.
confused or has
Okay,
laughed.
so try and
Yeah,
connect the dots. It's collecting data about your idea is going to help
yeah,
you execute better on the idea. And by collecting data, you need to be sharing your idea and getting the
exactly.
feedback.
There we go. Look at
Awesome.
that.
We did it.
Makes perfect sense.
Absolutely.
Alright, take care.
Yeah. Have a good.